Hi, today what I want to talk to you about is something that I shared with a lot of new hires when I was still a training manager. It's something that I learned during my manager development program. And since I don't have a lot of face time with new hires now in the company because of my new role, I kind of miss sharing this information. So what I want to do is share this with you today, and hopefully some of you would get inspired, better understand some of the development stages that you're going through. These concepts are not just applicable in a professional setting or on a lot of personal development. So again, it's called situational leadership, but we will not talk about the leader roles. We will only talk about the development levels, which I think you and I or anybody out there can relate to. I will also use 3 examples. So one is if you are trying to learn how to cook, and then 2 is if you're trying to learn how to drive, and 3 is if you just got hired in a BPO company and you're trying to learn the skills of the line of business that you got yourself into. So every level, we're going to try to identify the characteristics that are involved. Let's start with D1. D1 is when you are inexperienced, but you're eager to learn. You're willing to take directions. You are enthusiastic. You're excited. You're optimistic. Your confidence is based on hopes and transferable skills. But it isn't realistic yet. Let's start with the first example. The first one is cooking. Since kare-kare is my favorite dish, it's the first dish that I try to learn. Level 1 is when I go to the grocery store and I start buying the ingredients, and I try to choose the more expensive ones, because I thought the more expensive the ingredients are, the more delicious the dish would be. But I can tell you now that that isn't the case. And then if you're trying to learn how to drive, level 1 is when you get into driving school, and then you're very much excited to, step on the gas. You're very much excited to go out there on the actual road, and even the part where you decide to buy your own car. Right? It's full of hopes, excitement, very positive. Third is when you when you land a job in the BPO industry, you get into your training room on day 1. You get really excited. You try to look around and check your fellow trainees, see if there's someone cute, and I hope that you will have a great trainer. Level 2 is when you have some knowledge and skills, but you're not competent yet. You begin to feel frustrated, discouraged, you feel overwhelmed, you get confused, there is inconsistency in your performance, and this is the part where you need assurance that mistakes are part of the learning process. So let's go through the examples again. So 1 is cooking. This is the stage where you try to, try to cook it for the first time. You turn your stove on and then you begin to put your cooking oil. You try to follow the recipe because it's your first time religiously. Your first time might not be a success. So you're going to feel a bit frustrated because number 1, you feel like you wasted a lot of ingredients trying it out. The worst thing that can happen is that it tastes so bad that you have to throw it away. And it will take a while for you to try again because you feel a little bit discouraged. When you're trying to learn how to drive, this is and based on my personal experience, I got into a lot of self-accident. My bumpers, front and back, have been replaced multiple times. I've also reached a point where I wanted to return my car to the casa because I felt like I've wasted a lot of money on the repairs. I also felt discouraged that I also stopped driving for a while. And then our example number 3, if you are in a BPO, this is when you start learning about your line of business. They tell you as their trainer that they're having difficulties, that they needed extra help so that they'd be able to cope with the rest. You will hear phrases like, trainer, hindi yata para sa akin ng trabahong to. Nahihirapan ako, parang nagkamali ako ng pili. Self-doubts, right? Frustration, discourage, they're overwhelmed and confused. They feel like it's very difficult. So people who say that call center folks have an easy job answering phones have never been into call centers, have never worked in call centers, because it is not true. The job is not easy, especially if you get into complex accounts. It's never easy. You're gonna struggle. The fresh grads, whatever you hear outside about call centers, I'm not gonna deny that there are some truth to it, but one thing I can assure you, it is not an easy job. Physically, emotionally, mentally, there are challenges. You're not an expert on everything, right? And I want to put emphasis on mistakes are part of learning. If you are not committing mistakes, if you do not feel discouraged or overwhelmed or confused when you're trying to learn something new, you are not learning at all. Okay? I'll say it again. It is completely normal to commit mistakes when you're trying to learn something new. It is part of the process. You are progressing. If you are committing mistakes, it only means that you are trying, and you are trying hard enough. What you do with those emotions is the most important part of it, right? You can do two things. One is you can give up. And that's very easy to do. You just abandoned everything, right? You just give up and move forward, move on to something else. And you're going to go back to level 1, right? Instead of progressing to level 3. Or 2, you face the challenges, you ask for help, because when you ask for help, it doesn't mean that you're weak. It only means that you're very eager. You have the grit to learn. You are determined. You want to persevere to be successful, right? That is the right attitude when you are trying to learn something new, or when you want to be successful in the career that you've chosen. Whatever it is, it may not be in a call center, right? But that's the right attitude to have in order to move to level 3. Level 2 is very crucial and very difficult at the same time because of all the negative emotions. So what I will tell you is that you will not be successful on anything that you will attempt to do if you do not choose to be strong on level 2. Now let's move to level 3. Level 3 is when you reach a point where you're generally self-directed, but you also need opportunities to test your ideas with others. So your competence level is kind of high now, but your level of commitment, it still varies. What does that mean? You may get bored with a goal or a task because you feel like you already know what to do, right? You can twist and turn, you can modify, enhance the process, and still be successful at it because you are highly competent, right? But the question of will you be consistent on doing it? Will you be successful every time? Is all dependent on your motivation and again, on your commitment. Let's go through our examples. When you're trying to cook, this is the level where you no longer need the recipe. What if I experiment? What if I change something? Which is a good sign because it tells you that you're aiming for higher level of learning. And you might discover something that other people have not discovered yet. 2, when you're trying to learn how to drive. This is when, accidents barely happen. But they will happen, I tell you. Even if you're the best driver in the world, accidents may still happen. And it may not be induced by you, but by another driver who is reckless. This is the shift also from being defensive, mostly defensive, to sort of combining defensive and offensive. So to my drivers out there, you cannot be offensive all the time. You cannot be defensive all the time. It has to be a good balance of being defensive and offensive. For people in the PPO industry, this is probably the point where you've graduated from your nesting stage and you're taking calls in the production area. And you could multitask. Multitasking is one of the difficult skills that a call center agent would try to learn from day one of training up to the rest of his days in nesting. And the only way to master multitasking is through kinesthetic learning, right? That's when you repeatedly do the act until you get to master it. It gets successfully integrated or assimilated in your system. For example, when it was still allowed during my time as an agent, I've seen agents on the floor who were putting makeup while they're taking calls. And then the last level is what I call the mentor level, because number one, you're recognized as an expert, you're consistently competent, and you trust your own abilities to work independently. You're also self-assured, you're inspired. At the same time, you are inspiring others. You're also proactive and maybe asked to do too much. When you say asked to do too much, it's more than what is expected of you. For our example number one for cooking, this is the time when somebody consults you. Oh, you've learned how to cook kare-kare so good. I've tasted your cooking. So can you share your secret? Right? And then if you say yes, of course, you are going to mentor someone else how to cook kare-kare. Our example number two, driving. You get on a road trip with your friends, and then they see you maneuvering really good on the road. They'd ask you, how do you do that? For my folks in the BPO industry, this is a stage where your TL will ask you to mentor a newbie in your team. Because number one, you've consistently delivered great performance through your metrics. And then number two, your TL has seen a great potential in you that would make you a great mentor, meaning you're capable of transferring skills. This is a good sign. That should tell you that you are quite ready for a promotion. My advice is if you are assigned as a mentor, you start conversations with your team leader on the career path that you want for yourself. So those are all the 4 levels of learning according to the principle of situational leadership. I'll cite the source towards the end of the video if you want to do some additional reading. A lot of the resources on situational leadership are available online. So thanks for watching my video. Until our next learning session. Bye!